All right, this is the Noir Hour, and I'm here with Tara Vanflower and asshole down here, Tom
Then
of October Noir. Tara, how are you doing?
Well, I'm good now.
Yeah,
Technical
te-
difficulties aside.
technical difficulties always happen around here, so no sweat. Tom,
oh, what? It's your interview. I'm just here.
oh I know, I know. Well, it's great to talk to you. I have been. I will admit that I have not known of the band for a very long time until I joined this band, October Noir.
You,
And
you can
Tom cannot,
thank me for
huh?
that. I've
What?
been listening since '95. You can thank me for that one.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Well, he,
that's old school.
Yes.
yeah, he's definitely old school. Um, he always talks about how much Lycia is such a big influence on our music, and I was like, well, I've got to check it out because I mean, I'm not privy to a lot of music that a lot of people were then. I didn't have the access to music that a lot
You
do.
didn't have the age either.
Yeah, true,
Yeah, I mean,
true.
I grew up in rural Ohio, so if you didn't know somebody that knew something, you'd never find out about it. So that like everything I learned was from meeting people that introduced me to stuff too, including Lycia. So I get it.
Yeah, that's what
Yeah,
I'm trying to figure out too. I can't remember how I ran across you guys. Uh, I don't know. I know it was me and a mutual friend. I know there was a lot of like back in those days. They had the magazines where you could,
Hmm.
order CDs and stuff. And I think we ended up, I don't know if we did that, and that's how we kind of ran across it. It was just a random thing.
Yeah, somebody back in the day, we used to have like pen pals. So I had pen pals like all over the country, and we used to exchange tapes with like bands we liked or whatever. And someone sent me a copy of Ionia, and I wrote him back, and I'm like, I need to know everything about this person. And I wrote Sam at, I didn't know it was Sam at the time, but I wrote to Project Records, and I'm like, can you please give me this person's address? And so I wrote Mike a
And they
fan
did it.
letter. Yeah, I still have, funny enough, when we got married, Sam still had the letter that I sent him requesting Mike's address
So,
and
all
put
right.
it
So that's how it all happened. So you stalked him after you got his address. I see what happened. Okay. Okay.
kind of. I mean, not really, but we just started writing back and forth, and I was in a band at the time, and I was sending him my ridiculous tapes, and he always wanted a female vocalist, and just kind of happened. That's what happened.
So when
So,
did you come in with him?
Burning Circle and then Dust. That's
That was my favorite. Yeah, that's my favorite album. So
that was my intro, and I just sang on those two songs, and kind of just never left. So
yeah, that works. Yeah, because I mean, essentially, you could change the song title "A Presence in the Woods" to "A Presence in Sam's House."
yeah, although I didn't meet Sam till much later, but yeah.
Yeah, we'll still
Yeah.
go with that though. It sounds cooler.
Yeah, I always tell people you just never know if you hit somebody away, because I could have written him some other day and he'd have been too busy, or who knows, and
Yeah.
never would have met. Oh,
Well, no, I think it worked out exactly as it should have.
sure. Totally.
Well,
A whole living human being exists because of that record, so pretty
Hey,
cool.
shame.
I always like to ask, what have you been up to lately? I think that's what anybody tuning in would love to
Yeah.
know.
So we haven't really recorded any music because we had a pretty busy past couple years recording music. So we've kind of been laying low. Mike actually got, he has a frozen shoulder. One of his arms, it started in, and then now the other one is. So he can't lift his arm above like this high. And so he hasn't been able to like really play music at all. And so we've kind of been laying low anyway. So like all we've been doing recently is he's trying to play guitar again, and cataloging all of our records and stuff that we have in the house. We're getting ready to release them all on our Bandcamp because we have like every variant. The only variant we don't have is the original black cold vinyl, but everything else we have, and we're getting ready to release it on our Bandcamp page like in the next week or so. So if anybody is looking for anything, check out our Bandcamp. So kind of that's it that we've been doing as far as music goes. Just kind of laying low, and Mike's been trying to practice as much as he can until his arm kind of freezes up worse, and then he has to stop. So
Yeah.
kind of it.
Yeah, I saw that y'all had released a short EP this year.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, Casa Luna came out. I want to say that I'm horrible with dates, but I think that was like last summer. I want to say.
Right.
Both ones too. So if anybody missed out on that, we have a bunch. I think Avant Garde might still have some too. Not all the variants though.
Right. I was gonna ask
Yeah,
you.
we're all kind of music.
I was gonna ask you how you got into this band, but we've already got that covered. So.
Yeah, I stopped them.
Kind of what were some of your influences that have that kind of led you to go? You know, I mean, you use your voice as almost like an instrument most of the time when you don't sing, and that's something that's super rare, especially done well. So it's really cool. But I was wondering kind of how you got into doing the music that you do, and where some inspirations came from for that.
Sure. So it's funny because Mike and I were actually talking about this a couple nights ago, because I really wasn't a musician. I was a writer, but my friends were musicians, and like I can sing, I guess. So they needed a singer. So and I had all of these words written. So I just kind of started singing with my friends. And at the same time, I was listening to like stuff like The Cure, Bauhaus, Susie and the Banshees, stuff like Godflesh. Swans was a huge favorite band of mine. Yeah, and like Daisy Chainsaw, and so I had this, and Circle Jerks and Crucifix, and like all these kind of random underground type inspirations. But as a kid, I grew up listening to like bluegrass, old country and western, southern gospel. Like that's what my family listened to. So you probably can't tell that's an influence on me, but I think sometimes the way I sing might slightly be influenced by like, Loretta Lynn or something. I don't know. But I'm so untrained at literally everything that I just kind of, I don't have any, like, I couldn't try to sound like somebody else if I wanted to. So the influencers are there as far as maybe mindset, but I try to steer clear of trying to sound like somebody else or trying to do what somebody else has already done, just because first of all, I would fail at it. But secondly, I just, it's hard to do that when you're kind of off chart anyways, I guess. Just kind of do what I do and hopefully it works.
Yeah, I think Tom will agree that it's better to be less trained. It leaves you more open to be creative.
Sometimes.
Yeah, that's because I'm big on like the fundamentals and the people that do music theory and stuff. They're always bound to a set of laws and they can't get away from it. So
yeah, that, and Jarbo from Swan, she's like a huge influence on me as far as like she's sort of been a bit of a mentor to me with friends through the years. And I remember one of the things that I read that she said that really hit home to me was that she was like a trained vocalist and she had to unlearn everything that she'd been taught, because it is true. It's like the minute you start like adhering too much to rules, like you're missing out on a lot of creativity. And even where it goes, like, Mike has always had very minimal equipment, low end, nothing's expensive, everything's like cheap. But he can take that stuff and like manipulate it. I mean, Ionia and Dance Dark Corner were recorded on a 4-track cassette recorder. you can't tell that by listening to it because it sounds so like huge, you know. So I think it's any kind, or like, you know, you're not supposed to use guitar effects on a vocal. Well, who said?
Yeah, right.
Like there's no rules to anything. So that's definitely something. I mean, I feel like you have to have, obviously, if you're a musician, you have to have some training, right? Like you have to know how to play an instrument. Whether it's self-taught or lessons, it doesn't really matter.
You're not going to get very far if you're tone deaf, so there's that.
Yeah, you have to have some, you know, training someplace at least. Yeah, even if it's own kind of training.
I want to say Eddie Van Halen did some type of guitar lead piece to one of his songs. I remember seeing or reading about or something that he just recorded on this little like basic stereo, like push play and record button thing at the same time. And it added this little noise to it that I guess worked, and it was huge.
Sure. So. I mean, I think there's probably a million cases like that where you're using a piece of equipment not as it was intended, you know. But sometimes if you are too trained, you might not think that far outside the box to even to figure that out, you know.
Correct. Yeah, you won't. Yeah, you'll try and route to what your brain says.
Right. Or there's also those people that like, well, I need this piece of equipment before I can record, or, you know, and it's like, well, if you're a poor kid living out in the middle of nowhere, you may never get anything done then if you're waiting around for the day that you can afford that piece of equipment and that piece of equipment. Like, you take what you have and work with it a lot of the times.
Yeah, I agree.
I had a question. Where did the band name come from? Because I'm curious on that.
So Mike studied cultural geography when he was in college. He actually has a cultural geography degree. And he was super interested in like ancient Greece and the culture and all that kind of stuff. And so he found the name on a map and he liked the classic feel of it. So there was that angle. But on another angle is that a lot of the bands that he liked at the time, Killing Joke, Susie and the Banshees, like, you know, all those bands were playing at the Lyceum Theatre in London. And so he kind of wanted to evoke that same kind of imagery. So that's kind of where it came from. His geography degree coupled with his love of post-punk music. So.
Okay.
It's funny. It's always the small things when something comes out of it.
Sure. Yeah, kind of just looking at a map. I mean, he was learning about this stuff and it just felt like that was it.
So on some of your solo albums, which I just found out about recently.
I'm sorry.
No.
It sounds like me.
No. No, tell me how those came about and how those came to be, and just some backstory on some of that stuff.
Sure. So first of all, Lycia is Mike, right? So like this is my perception of it. He doesn't dictate it this way or anything like that. But to me, Lycia is Mike and it's his vision. So if I'm gifted with the chance to record a song with Lycia, that's how I look at it. I don't look at it as a guarantee that I'm always going to be on every single record. And so he also has a very specific way of working. Everything's very mathematical and almost geometric in a way. And so I'm so not like that at all. So I kind of wanted to do something different that was sort of my own, that where I can control the absolute lack of control that I have. Again, I'm a person, right? So the first one he did help me quite a bit with, just like programming some drums and the actual recording process of it. And some of those songs were songs from my earlier band that I redid. The second one, This Swim Like Liquid Honey, let me think, is that the first one or the second one? No, I see, it's been so long. My Fire-Filled Heart was the second one. I did literally everything on that. He just did the mastering. But again, it was kind of like an extension of my writing where I wanted to sort of tell stories. Like, you'll notice they're really not songs. They're more like kind of pieces, I guess, like ambient noise kind of stuff, melodies thrown in.
I would say it's like a soundscape almost.
Yeah, definitely. They're definitely not songs, but they're more like almost soundtrack-ish to some whatever things going on in my head at the time.
Yeah.
But because like I just wanted to do something a little different outside of Lycia that was more free form and almost like poetry with sound, I guess, in a way. So
Did you ever play any shows doing those?
I did, yeah, I did. I played a couple back in the 90s, just a couple, and then early 2000s I played in LA, actually with one of my graphic novels that came out. One of my friends is a promoter in Los Angeles, and I'm like, wouldn't it be fun? Remember when what is that? What was that girl festival? Lilith Fair. That kind of stuff was going on, and we were joking around, like, wouldn't it be fun to do like a girl version of that for like dark chicks or whatever? And I had this book coming out, so, and the character, the name of the book is Lives of Ilya, so we called it Ilya Fair, and it was me, Jarbo, Eva O, Monica Richards, who else? Dark Muse, and then Sorrow, who was also the promoter for the show. So it was really fun. I can't even believe I got to play with all those girls. But yeah, it was pretty cool. But that was the last show. Yeah, that was the last show. And that was, I think, like, I want to say 2008, maybe. It was a long time ago.
Yeah. Yeah, I was sadly too young to know about any of that. I'm catching up.
Yeah. I get creeped out sometimes when I do the math in my head about the passage of time. Like, my son just turned 11, and I'm like, how? It's just crazy. Like, time, I mean, they tell you time flies by, but when you're watching it in a kid, how fast they evolve, it really hammers it into your head just how fast it goes.
Yeah. I think the older you get, the faster it goes too.
Definitely.
I think it's because you become more cantankerous towards the world and you're just ready to sleep more, so you just kind of move past it.
Somebody actually told me on Instagram, I think it was yesterday, they sent me this message and they go, "You're just not as nice as you used to be." It was so out of the blue because I'd had nothing but pleasant conversations with this person, and I'm like, okay, that's disconcerting. And he's like, well, you just seem so much nicer, like 2018 to 2021. And I'm like, okay, maybe I've had a shitty last 10 months. Like 2021 was only like 10 months ago. Like, okay, well, but I don't feel like I treat people worse than I did last year. Very strange. Like, I feel like if anything, I've gotten a lot nicer, actually. I've been, man, when I was young, I was mean as a snake, as they say.
You know, hormones, all this stuff.
Then
it comes back around with menopause.
I ain't blaming nothing on that.
I'm to hit that point in my life right now.
Good luck. No, I just think, I think that I'm way more long-suffering and empathetic towards certain things, but I don't let people waste my time with being dicks. So
yeah.
But I was way meaner.
Your fuse kind of grows shorter for that kind of mentality from people, so I can understand that.
I don't know. Normally, though, I don't fight with people. I just quietly go away. I don't deal with, but I think that he was triggered by a meme I posted or something. I don't.
Oh God. No.
It's just weird.
Everybody's offended these days, so.
Yeah.
I guess. Bizarre.
I'm offended by Tyler's hair right now. So.
How beautiful it is.
Well, the gothic cowboy.
Yeah. Well, I do my part. I do what I can. Well, I was going to ask you, I mean, I think we all have a favorite album. And I know that's going to be a hard question to answer. Maybe I'll just ask like a favorite song, just one that
That's even harder.
That's even harder. Yeah, what are you doing, Tyler?
say an
favorite album. Which one?
album. Favorite
You know what? I always just say Ionia because it literally changed my life. But I think that, I mean, there's some that I feel less connected to maybe now because they were so like at a weird point in my life or something. But, you know, I tend to gravitate more towards the Mike records as being my favorite ones. I'm not involved in them, so it feels disturbing
Because I was going to ask you, like, because it's very atmospheric and it's almost drony in a degree where you stay locked in at the same time. Most droniness can get very repetitive.
Boring. Yeah.
Very, very much so. So I was always wondering what influences what you guys are putting down together. I mean, I imagine people sitting around just eating a bunch of mushrooms or, you know, playing out in the woods or something. But...
I wish it was that exotic.
Yeah.
No, I think it's I mean, of course, every song's different and every release has been different. You know, like you take an album like Cold. I was just back in Ohio last week, and that's where we recorded that album. And I went to our apartment that we lived in at the time, and when we recorded that album, me, Dave, and Mike all lived together on the top floor of this apartment on the back side of it. And behind us was this just vast field and forest beyond it. And it was like one of the coldest winters that we've had in Northeast Ohio in a long time. So that's what we were looking at every day, was this bleak, frozen, cold forest. And the mood in the house was also cold because at that point we had like grown estranged from Dave and he didn't like us anymore. And it was like, it was cold outside. It was gloomy. It was cold and gloomy in the house. And so I think it had its impact on the record.
Absolutely.
But things, you know, are randomly triggered. Like we were going to do a single with a band that never happened, and like Mike had written a song for it. It was A Quiet Way to Go, which was the song that in Luna, and we were just gonna, and that name says it all, A Quiet Way to Go. That was literally going to be the last thing we ever did. Just this little 45 single split with another band, sayonara, catch you later. But then there was a delay with the other band, and then Mike because he'd been playing the guitar so much, he started like, oh yeah, that kind of sounds cool. And then he worked on that song, and then it ended up being this EP. So sometimes you go in like, okay, it's time to write a new record. Then other times you're like, it accidentally happened. So I don't know. Like I told somebody the other day, somebody asked me, are you guys working on anything? And I said, no, Lycia's asleep. She'll wake up if she wakes up. That's just kind of how, like, we had no intentions of putting out that last record. And kind of the same with the prior two. So when she wakes up, she wakes up. It's up to her.
Yeah, you never quit. It never seems to be over.
Yeah, you try. Like we've tried many times, and if you'll see, there's been gaps between when we were just like, all right, we're out, and then we're not done, I guess. But I don't know. This time we might be done. I don't know.
Would you be happier being done?
No, because like again, I try to be done all the time, like whether it's music or writing. But there's just always something missing if I'm not doing it. Like with Lycia, it's a little more difficult because there's other people involved in it, so I'm not the sole person in control. So I basically sit back and wait for my assignment from Mike. When he's like, okay, here's a song, then I'll be like, okay, I'm doing music again. But like with writing, it's, you know what I mean? Writing is like 100% my thing. So when I'm not doing it, I feel like I'm wasting time. And like, it's almost like I can feel these characters pacing back and forth in my brain going, all right, come on, come talk to me. Let's hang out. And so I feel definitely like I'm lacking something, and having to, I work a job, whatever. We all have to work jobs. And that's so not who I am as a person, but you have to do it. And I don't hate my job or anything like that, but it's not who I am. Right. So it's like I have to put on this work persona, and then my other person is sitting over here going, yeah, but I want to be doing this over here. And
you might want to see a psychiatrist. They say that's split personalities.
Maybe, I don't know. Or those characters have become real. What do they call those? What do they call those? Whenever you, what's it called? I can't think of the name. There's a name for it. Not a totem. Something like that, though. Where you actually call it into being. I don't know. There's a word for it.
Well, I call sleep into being a lot, but I wouldn't call it a totem. Wouldn't last very long.
I definitely understand the work. The work. I mean, me and Tom both work, and it's terrible. And it feels like it's ripping at my soul all the time.
Yeah, it just feels like it's like just this time-sucking thing that's taking you away from what you should be doing,
Well, it's not your passion, and you're making somebody else money.
Yeah, basically, and you're living the rules that somebody else puts in place. And again, I don't mind my job, and I love my coworkers. They're all fantastic. But it's, when I'm ready to clock out, I don't think about it again until I have to the next day. Whereas with the other stuff, I'm always kind of working through it in my head.
Yep. That's exactly how it happens.
Mm-hmm.
So you're an author, and you're talking about you're writing books, which
Mm-hmm.
I will admit I have gathered quite a few books lately, and I have not cracked the first one because I've been so busy. But what is your writing like? You have quite a catalog, don't you?
Yeah, there's a lot of them, and and I haven't even released all of them yet because there's some that are done that just need to be edited and re-edited and blah blah blah. But I don't know. I will fully admit I am horrendously awful at promoting myself or explaining my works in regards to writing. I don't know what it is. Like someone will be like, "What's your book about?" And I'm like, I don't know, stuff.
Yeah.
So it kind of is similar to the way I do my music in that I'm trying to like paint the picture of what I'm seeing in my brain. And I've heard other writers talk about this where you can actually, it's almost like channeling in a way. Like I can see it in my head and I'm doing my best to describe it to you. Hopefully doing a good job at it. But the very first book I wrote, Violent Violet, actually came from a dream that I had that was so detailed, like it was like watching a movie. And when I woke up, I was talking to Mike. I'm like telling him all this stuff. I'm like, yeah, then this happened and this happened. And I'm like, I should just write this, because I did write when I was younger, but it would be like me and my friends would sit around on like a Friday night because we were nerds and we didn't go anywhere. And we would have a notebook and I would start a story, then pass it to the next person, and then they would add their part. And we would write these like big, long adventures. I had notebooks like this thick of these like goofy stories that we wrote of, going to the goth club and meeting cute boys and blah, 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 and all this kind of stuff. And so I'm like, I'm going to try to write this dream. And it ended up being like 400 pages or whatever it was. I don't know. And that was like clear back in 2004 when the first draft of that came out. And the story just keeps building and building and building. They're all intertwined, like all the characters are related for every single book that I have. And I've tried not to do that, and then it always just ends up. I know it sounds crazy, but the characters really do what they want to do. I can say the book is going to go this way, and then it ends up, nope, it's going over there. And so even though I've tried to write books not based on supernatural stuff, and it always comes back to supernatural stuff. It's crazy. I know it sounds crazy where you're like, no, the characters don't want to do that. They want to go over there instead. It's really weird. But
It's harmonies of the catastrophic mind.
I don't know what it is, but it's interesting. And again, like I said, that's why I always feel like it's like I have these characters like panthers pacing back and forth in my mind going, come on, it's my turn. It's my turn. When am I getting my turn? But it never happens. So, oh, there's a greyhound nose.
Oh.
Just came in. Who is that?
Well, it sounds like you'll be writing until you're at the end of time.
Yeah, and that's what's depressing is that I spend, 8 hours of my day working, and then, you've got life responsibilities, feeding people, activities, all this stuff. And then by the time you can actually sit down to write, you're like, okay, well, I'm super tired and my brain is absolutely fried. So I try to steal a little bit of time here and there, but I'm sure you guys know from writing music, like you can't just turn it off and on. Like you can't go, I've got 15 minutes, I'm going to write
No, definitely doesn't
3
work.
pages.
Yeah.
It's just not that easy.
Yeah. I mean, there's some stuff, it might take a week before, you finally are able to sit down with it and stuff like worn out. Usually roadblocks majority of times.
And sometimes you get into the flow of it and then you're like, oh, I got to go take my kid to karate, or oh, I work today. You know what I mean? Or like, oh, it's 3 o'clock in the morning and I get up at 4. I better get to sleep. So, yeah. But I don't know if I answered your question in regards to what I actually write about, but
stuff.
I mean, vampires.
You did. You said stuff.
Yeah.
Stuff and things.
Stuff and things. Yeah.
I mean, they're sort of horror based, but not quite. And they're sort of, it's kind of like watching an episode of True Blood and Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but not. I don't know.
The 1992 film Buffy, or are we talking about the television?
No, probably more closer to the TV show, but not quite so goofy.
Yeah. Oh, I saw him. Is that the 11-year-old?
Yeah, he's trying to sneak in. He always tries to pop in.
I know those troubles too.
Yeah. Not I. But
Not yet.
I've got a beagle and I had to put him outside because he'll start barking at just the right time.
Yes, I
can't get him to
know.
stop.
I'm super lucky because the greyhounds are very quiet, but the 2 dogs that we had prior were like, they would bark if you looked at them, just nonstop.
Small dogs.
Yeah, they were half pug, half poodle.
Yep,
so
there you go.
They like to bark, but these guys are quiet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, this is always my favorite question to ask. I wanted to talk to you about like your favorite tours, because I know that y'all have done tours, and the show is always one of my favorite parts besides the writing process. I'm sure you have stories and wild stories of tours and mishaps and whatnot. So tell me some of your favorite experiences on the road, and just doing live shows, just anything like that.
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them had their fun and their own character to them. When we did the Burning Circle tour, we toured with a band called Trance to the Sun, and we became very good friends with them. And so it was really fun getting to spend time with them every day, and their music was fantastic. So it was like a joy to hear them play every night.
Yeah.
That was good. And then what did we do next? We did random shows here and there. Playing Mexico City was amazing. Insanely supportive people down there, just insanely supportive. And like they took us to the pyramids and like we did all kinds of stuff. And Cold Tour, we did like 27 dates and 30 nights, I think. So it was pretty busy. And that was our longest one that we did. I tell you though, it was very frustrating for us because we didn't have, the Cold Tour was just Mike and I and a DAP machine. So he drove the car, we had 2 roadies with us, but mostly we loaded all the equipment. We had to do everything ourselves. We had like zero tour support from the record label. You know, the Burning Circle tour, we drove around in a tiny Geostorm, Mike, me, and Dave,
God.
with a rooftop carry. Yeah, it was insane. And we drove all over the country in this tiny little car. And you know, it was crazy. But I'm sure you guys probably want to know about the Typo Negative tour. That's what I'm guessing.
Actually, I
That
told
That was
Tyler
the
don't
craziest
ask me
one.
questions
Was the
about
Typo.
Yeah, well, I like to hear about shows.
Yeah, it was. So that was a funny tour because, you know, like Peter called like to do these shows. And we're like, yeah, sure. Like we didn't know them at the time. Oh, did he like go away?
I don't know. He probably turned it off for a second while he
Oh,
cries or something.
well, I hope not.
He's probably
But
just rearranging himself.
oh, okay. Yeah. So the Typo tour was fun. Not. Um, our first night was in Connecticut, and it was like the crowd really didn't like us, to say the least. And you know, it was crazy because we'd gone from like touring on our own, where people were kind of there to see us, to like with them, it was very much like, we don't like you, I don't know who you are, we don't want you here, and I'm going to scream and yell at you and throw stuff at you until you leave. And so it was pretty hard, it was pretty brutal. But like Syracuse, New York, there was tons of skinheads there, and like they were throwing things at us, spitting on us. And at the time, I think I was like 23 or 4 years old. So I was like this young girl, like standing in front of these very aggressive men, spitting on me and throwing glass bottles. And like, I remember at one point we watched security grab some guy out of the crowd, take him to the side of the stage, beat the crap out of him, and throw him out the side of the club right there. It was crazy. And like, but Peter and everybody in the band were like super nice and like super supportive, super fantastic. But yeah, that was a very scary tour. But it was good because it also exposed us to a lot of people that we never would have been exposed to probably otherwise, thanks to because he definitely was supportive of other bands and always made a point to like talk about other bands in interviews and stuff. And I think broadened a lot of people's scope of what they listened to, which I think was just really great of him, because so many people don't talk about bands that influence them.
Right.
And they're not really supportive of people kind of beneath them, you know? So I think that was really, it was huge. It was huge for us. He really did a lot for us and was just super, super nice. Like the whole band are just really great guys. So while that tour was scary, and I think towards the end we were only playing like 4 songs. Like we would get up, hammer out those 4 songs, and then get the hell off the stage, you know, lick our wounds backstage. But yeah, it was good. But yeah, touring was fun, but also we never had the sound that we wanted, because it was just, we couldn't have a full band. We couldn't afford to take out a full band. We didn't have a sound man, so we had to rely on house sound, which, as you well know, isn't that great. And especially at that time, because people were like, what is this setup? I don't understand this setup. Like they would mistake Mike's guitar for a synth, and like it was crazy. So we never got to
a drum set, and you're not running through a drums and amp.
Yeah,
it's
right.
a totally different feel.
Right. And a lot of times we would get there and they wouldn't have any stage amplification. We're like, we're an electronic band, like,
right.
Like, so we never got to present the show that we really wanted to present. Like we had a couple shows that feel good, but for the most part, it was just always like a disappointment. Like we're just letting everybody down, and whether that was their perception or not, I don't know, but I know for a fact that was our perception.
Yeah, well, it was definitely a different day and age back then, because if you toured with Typo Negative next week, the reception would be incredible. And I think,
Yeah,
I think that,
it's weird.
if that happened now, people would go insane, and you would amass a huge following, to where back then everybody was it was just a different time, I think.
Yeah, well, there wasn't the internet,
Yeah.
really. So, yeah, it was definitely a different thing, you know. But I still, to this day, though, will get messages from people that will say, "Oh, I found out from your band because of Peter." So, I mean, even to this day, the impact of that is, I mean, of course, I also got to sing on their record, but
Yeah, you are
that was
enshrined. You're kind of enshrined in Typo Negative fame for that.
kind of
Because,
bizarre.
well, it was their final farewell album, and that was a big deal. I think, I think it's big. I think it's more of a big deal now than it ever was then. You know, being the
Yeah,
last offering from
it's
that band.
interesting to me because it feels like they're just getting bigger and bigger. Like,
Yeah.
just remember seeing, t-shirts and people making arts and crafts and like all this stuff for Typo back in the day, but like now, like if you go on Etsy and you put in Typo Negative, like there will be all these dolls and like custom t-shirts and like all this stuff, and it feels like the band is just getting like bigger. I think because it's becoming this mythic thing,
Yeah.
and this cult mythic thing. So, Peter and the rest of the guys too, they just had such a massive impact on the scene and like dark music. So, I think it's really cool. And
Well,
I
and I
feel
think,
completely like the fact that they even asked me to do that in the first place was like crazy, and then that it ended up being the final one is just mind blowing.
well, I attribute it to the music these days. Like, the brand new music is just it's not appealing to most people, uh, especially rock and roll. I mean, rock and roll is, I don't know. I feel like it's kind of stagnant right now. So people are searching for some good music and really searching out the older stuff. I mean, going back, because
Yeah.
everything nowadays is just, I can't tell you that I listen to a whole lot of brand new music now.
Yeah, I actually feel kind of the opposite. Like I feel like there's so much out there that's good that it's almost impossible to keep up on it. Like you have stuff like Chelsea Wolfe, Black Mare. Like, I mean, those are just two things that came up off the top of my head, but there's so much like moody, dark music that really is sort of like you don't quite know what to categorize it as, but it has this like dark, moody vibe to it. It's not quite metal, but it's not pop at all, and it's not, post punk, but it has like elements of all these different things together. And I think a guy like Peter is sort of partially responsible for why that exists now, because he was doing stuff like taking metal and adding, all his influences on a personal level to it. So yeah, I don't know. I feel like there's so much good music. I just quit trying to even, and I mean, we talked about that anyways. I kind of don't listen to a lot of music,
Yeah.
but there's so much stuff out there that I'm like kind of lost. And plus, being old, I'm like, whatever. I'm old over here. I don't know what's going on, but yeah, I don't know.
Well, yeah, you could be right. You could be right that there's a lot of good music and great music coming out, but where do you find it? I mean, everything is, the saturation level is very high.
That's kind of the problem too. And so, like it's almost kind of back to the way it was back in the day where you kind of had to know someone that you might like taste as them. And I mean, yeah, I love Bandcamp. Like I freaking love Bandcamp. And there's so much good stuff on there. And like I try, whenever I find something, I try to share links so that, people can, maybe I'm their person that finds new stuff for them. I don't know, but I mean, I've got friends that I know I respect their taste in music. So if they say something's good, I'm like, there's no way I'm not gonna like it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, and again with life and like work and doing all this stuff, it's kind of hard to find time to like. It's not like when you're young and you find a new band and you obsess about it and you learn all the lyrics and you hunt down everything you can to, you know, from that band. Like I just don't have that energy level anymore, which, and I tell this to people all the time. I'm kind of a late bloomer to Killing Joke. Like I always knew who they were and casually listened to them, but I got obsessed with them like in the last year or two. And I'm like, I'm so mad that I'm not 16-year-old me that would have found every, like, cemented every lyric and every album and hunted down pictures and like had it all, you know, obsessively entrenched in my brain.
Yeah,
My brain doesn't work like that anymore.
That's how I feel about a ton of bands.
Yeah,
Totally. Even your band and the music that you and Mike have made. Because like I said, I had never heard Lycia before joining October Noir, and he's like, "Yeah, man." And now when I listen to some of our music, you know, I've been practicing, we've been playing and kind of getting ready for a show, and now I listen to this music and I'm hearing a lot of influence coming from what he was talking about.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think influences are interesting because sometimes they're super subtle, but we absorb everything that we listen to and watch, and sometimes we don't realize stuff's coming through, but it's all in there because it becomes a part of, you know, your general makeup or whatever.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, so hopefully Mike can get his shoulder or his arm together.
Yeah. It's improving, but it's just a slow process. I think his doctor told him it takes like 18 months or something ridiculous. So, you know, he's able to at least play the guitar some now, but it's not, I mean, he was playing for like, because he taught himself classical guitar. So he was playing for like 2 or 3 hours every single day. And just the position of that caused that shoulder to get jacked up. And once that happens, you just have to, like, he's been through physical therapy and all this stuff, but you just kind of have to let it ride its course until it corrects itself. So
yeah,
at least he's playing guitar again.
We had talked a few weeks ago about setting this up, and I definitely did a deep dive into the band. I'll say this: the atmospheric dark wave. I would say this is probably like the definition of that sound. If anybody wanted to know what atmosphere sounded like, I would definitely point them to Lycia.
I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then I can say this from a fan perspective because I'm a Lycia fan first. I sometimes, you know, I live with Mike every single day. I've been around him 24/7 for decades. And whenever I hear, still to this day, I mean, if I come up and I hear a song, I'm like, how does that come out of that person? You know, like it blows my mind that comes out of him. And you know, even with Casa Luna, the last one that we put out, I'm like, where does this come from? Like, you know, because we're just dorks sitting around the house watching Game of Thrones or whatever, and then this stuff just kind of pours out, and I don't know where it comes from, but it's like, it's bizarre. I don't know. It's not intentionally contrived, I can tell you that. It just kind of comes from someplace over out here, you know.
Yeah, it seems like it comes from a dark place, deep and dark. It's like me and Tom were talking about the same exact thing about. Yeah. Tom was like, I got to ask her where some of this comes from. So,
well, you know, there's history there, and a lot of it is very much based on deep-rooted pain. And of course, people are open to interpret things to whatever fits in their, you know, a song might mean one thing to one person and something completely different to another. Yeah, I mean, because I know the backstory, some of the lyrics that he writes gut me every time I hear them. So, you know, Mike is Lycia, so there's nothing contrived about that. You know, you see some people that sort of put on goth as a costume or whatever. First of all, we're not goths. We've never said we were goths, blah, blah, blah. But that's what you sort of get lumped into anytime you play sort of dark music, right?
Oh yeah.
But
I think it fits.
yeah, sort of.
It fits into the.
People can call it that. It's fine.
Yeah.
But like, you know, back in the day, like we would read these reviews and it would be like walking the catacombs through the cemetery, and we're like, what? That song's about my mom dying. Like, I'm not talking about cobwebs and cemetery. Like, you know, like.
No, I get it because I have similar.
Yeah,
stuff that
like
I do, and people just are like
misinterpret it. And like there's people who kind of put on the costume of darkness, and then there's people that just are dark, and those people don't always wear black clothes. They're just the guy sitting on the bench at the park. You know, and that's more like if you saw Mike every day, you would never suspect that he has anything to do with music, really. You know, I'm the weird one in the group. He's very much like not weird. And so where the stuff comes from is a place of real like existential dread, and you know, it's not like a spooky costume that we put on to like write cool songs. You know, it's like based on real torturous mental crap and emotional crap and like situations. And
yeah,
like
because I can very much relate to that. But also, I don't know if you guys are similar in the sense of normally when you write things, like you kind of cater and tailor the mood of what you're feeling in what you're producing to how the music kind of comes out or flows. So, you know, like happy lyrics or happy songs, and you know.
I don't know. I don't really know. I remember when The Burning Circle came out, like there was a lot of backlash when that record came out, and people were saying we were sellouts and Tara ruined the band and blah 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 blah. And like in retrospect, that seems ridiculous. I mean, I thought
I
it was
don't understand that.
but like people thought the song "Pray" was so happy, and like. First of all, if we sold out, I'd like to know where those checks are because we got royally screwed. But like, just, there's never been any contrived route. It's never been like, we're going to write a song about XYZ, or we want this song to be happy and this song to be dark and depressing, this song to be aggressive, and this, it just kind of what happens.
Well, and that's not so much like being that kind of cut and dry with everything, but just more the sense of whatever's flowing lyrically or whatever that mood or that feeling is in what you're writing about. So if it's torturous, does it have a tendency basically to flow more on your musical writing on the instrumental side, make it sound
yeah. I think though too that that's just who we are as people. Like, I mean, I've written. I laugh about this, but like legit, every single song I write about is about love and death. Like every single one, time, death, love. That's what I write about, and that's essentially what my books are about too. Time, death, and love. Like that's. I don't know. It's something that has tortured me since I was a very small child, like very small. And I can't ever get it right. And so I keep trying and trying and trying and trying and trying. And maybe there's multiple facets of the same thing, but I feel like I can't get it right. And so like every song is about that. And I think for Mike, a lot of it is this sort of existential escapism, trying to like set a mood, but not intentionally. Like it's just I don't know how to describe it. It's like a soundscape. I don't know. I don't know how to describe. I don't know how it happens, or you know, like I said, it's not contrived. It just comes from someplace, you know.
Yeah.
I've been listening to my favorite album is A Line That Connects. I don't know what it is about that album. I don't know if it's the drums. Um, I know one thing that it is. There is a lot of heaviness in there.
Yeah, that's a fun record. That was fun.
It's almost like where he just lets it all hang out in every way possible musically on the heavy side. Like
Yeah. Go ahead, sorry.
Kind of attribute to like the new Killing Joke. They just get ridiculously heavy.
Yeah.
And when I was listening, I've been listening to that album all day today, and it's just there are so many parts in there that are just beautiful and perfect, and then it gets heavy and almost industrial heavy.
Mm-hmm.
Love it. I mean, that's
well, that was a huge influence on him, you know. Back in the 80s, he listened to post-punk. He listened to some metal, like Judas Priest and stuff like that. And post-punk and punk and like that Detroit stuff, like Stooges. And then he was also listening to like Skinny Puppy and stuff like that, Swans. And so all that's in there. And like when you hear early Lycia, like if you listen to Ionia and try to divorce any kind of like genre from it in your brain, I just recently listened to Ionia again, and I'm like, it sounds like Killing Joke to me. Like the drums are heavy like Killing Joke, and you know, like you can feel the influence of all that stuff on him. And with A Line That Connects, it was really fun because everybody was back in. John Fair was there, Dave was there, I was there, Mike's there, and then even Michael Irwin, who he was in bands with before Lycia. And so he revisited some of those old songs and remade them. And so it has kind of that same youthful energy from being young, you know. I think that's probably where a lot of that heavy influence came from again, from being young and just kind of dredging that vibe up, I guess, you know.
It had a different, it had kind of a different feel. It just heavy and just it did feel, I guess energetic and would be or it just wasn't a lot. It wasn't very atmospheric. It was well, it was, but it almost got. It's almost like a lot of that album was mixed with the atmosphere plus the heaviness, and that's what I gravitate towards too most of the time.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, it definitely felt very post-punk to me.
Yeah.
That was a good one.
Tom, what are some of the ones that really got you?
Oh Lord. You know, I think Quiet Moments. I think that because Mike had walked away from music for a long time, and when he did that album, like nobody else was involved in it. It's essentially, to me, it's a solo record, and it's so sad in like a beautiful way, and certain lines from certain songs in there, like I can't even listen to it without crying. Like it's so, and just knowing, you know, that he had walked away from music and like all that had happened personally, because you know, I don't know if you guys know, Mike nearly died. He has type 1 diabetes. He found out in the like late 90s and was misdiagnosed as a type 2 diabetic, but he was really a type 1 diabetic, and so he legit almost died. Like he was very, very sick and body was shutting down. And then because of that, we essentially lost our career, because at the time, the only way to get health insurance was to get a job and get a job through an employer, because if you had a pre-existing condition, nobody would insure you. So we had to quit touring. We had to, you know, everything was over. That all ended when he found out he had diabetes, and we had to go get jobs. And then that happened. And then at the same time, the record industry kind of collapsed because everyone was downloading music for free. Nobody was buying CDs anymore. And we didn't have that income and we couldn't tour. It was over. And then things with the record label got really bad. And so there was all of this stuff happening. And you know, his mom died and like all of this stuff. And so knowing everything that happened from a firsthand perspective, and then like legit walking away, and then him to come back to it was like, that record to me is like kind of a testament to that period. I mean, Tripping Back into the Broken Days was too, in a way, but the darkness was still there at that point. And with Quiet Moments, it's just kind of like this quiet, gentle darkness that's comforting in like a really bizarre way. I don't know.
I was gonna mention Tripping Back into the Broken Days, because some of those songs, you know, it's all acoustic, really. You and him. Some of those chord progressions and patterns. I was talking to Tom about it. You know, I listen to a lot of metal. One band that really came to mind is like Opeth. I don't know if you know them, but
What band?
Opeth.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Listening to some of those songs and listening to him play and the way that he arranged those chords, it immediately made me think about bands like Opeth and those bands like that from overseas that really get really heavy, but when they come down, it almost sounds like a direct copy from something that they have done.
That's interesting.
It's just like, well, it makes me think. It makes me wonder how much that you have influenced other people with your music, because just like the Cure is so important to so many different genres. I feel like without a doubt that Lycia is right there with them, because I'm telling you, I was listening to that album. I had to listen to it twice, and I was just, some of those chords and that guitar, I've heard that same style before in the black and metal and the heavy metal. So,
well, you can only do so much on an instrument.
Yeah, but it was very reminiscent.
That's interesting though, and like it's always kind of, you know, been a bit mind-blowing to us that, I mean, we're on Avant-Garde, which is a huge metal label from Italy. And, you know, we used to get letters from certain black metal musicians back in the day and stuff. And it's like, technically the music isn't the same, but I think a lot of it comes from the same place. So it's relatable. And yeah, I don't know. It's super interesting. Like, that's kind of the way I like the way things are now, because genres aren't so necessarily specific anymore. Like, it used to be like, you know, if you're like this type of band, you would never play a show with that type of band. And it almost feels now that people almost don't quite care as much about genres anymore. It's more about the mood of the music, or like the mindset. So a band like Opeth makes sense with a band like, you know, whoever.
Yeah,
or,
but
it fits better now.
A lot of times they'll stack these bands that are all kind of within the same realm. But, you know, if you go into a place and you're watching this, you're there for 3 hours on your feet, and you're almost hearing the same thing again.
Yeah.
And I've always have been much more respectful over people that take different styles of bands and bring them all into the house.
Yeah, I think it's more interesting, and I mean, I think it can be annoying if the bands are nothing alike, but if they're coming from sort of mindset, the music can be different, but feels similar enough to where it's good. It opens people's eyes to different types of music, you know?
Right.
Like, I find it so bizarre that, you know, like, we put out Casa Luna, which has like synth pop songs on it. And it's the same record label that, like, what, Emperor is on? Like, that's my
Yeah.
I think that's so cool because I think people should expose themselves to, like, different types of stuff that maybe they didn't know even existed, you know?
Right.
So, I don't know. I think that's cool.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. Well, the band you've got such a huge catalog that surely you have fans of all genres come to your music all the time. Even if one album sounds different than the next, they're still a fan.
Well, it's interesting because there are, like, straightforward metal people. There's black metal people. Then there's, like, sort of college rock type people, and then of course the classic goth people, the post-punk kid. I mean, it's kind of like a wide range, and I mean, but that's kind of how we all are, aren't we? Like, we don't. I mean, it's better to be this way, where you don't listen to just one narrow little scope of things. You should be able to take in different types of stuff, right? So I guess it makes sense, but it used to not be quite like that. Back in the 90s, we had so many arguments about this with the record label. It wasn't even funny. You guys are goths and you're playing goth clubs. And we're like, yeah, but, why? Why are you only marketing us to that when we don't even really fit that per se? Like, really, what's the difference between, like, Lycia and Radiohead? They're not a goth band. The same moody feelings are there, so it was always an irritant to us to be told, because again, we were talking earlier about rules. If you call yourself something, then automatically you have rules applied to you where you have to fit a standard. Well, I don't want to fit a standard. I don't fit a standard in my daily life. So that's irritating to me. The minute you say I'm XYZ, then you have to be XYZ.
Right.
I'd rather not be anything.
Yeah.
I know that's because people have to have some kind of descriptor,
Well,
but
what it unlocks is it allows, bands like yourselves to really explore other territories within music, but also kind of sweep it back into your own, sphere of what you are. I think
yeah, I feel like we are just who we are, and if whoever wants to listen to it is welcome to come in. I don't care, doesn't matter to me what else you listen to. Like,
right.
It is whatever.
Yeah. I think there's something for everybody in Lycia, especially
I hope
people that
so.
love acoustic music. I mean, it's getting cold now, and I love to dive into acoustic styles and get
Interesting.
lost and try not to fall too far into the dark river.
Depression.
Yeah.
Yeah. Most people say it's cold season, the record and the temperature.
Yeah.
They always usually button it's getting cold outside.
Yeah, I think it's better associated with that kind of environment.
Yeah.
Because I mean, a lot of it is it's almost like a pagan derivative in a lot of ways.
Yeah, I
Musically.
can see that. I can see that. Never intentional,
Yeah, no, you guys do doing your thing.
Yeah. Pretty much.
Well, Tara, I won't keep you too much longer. I appreciate you coming in and chatting with us two guys.
Well, I was glad to meet you guys.
Just assume
Yeah.
my
And-
gender.
I did. Now I'm gonna get flagged for that.
I call everybody guys, whatever. Dude, whatever. You can call me a guy, I don't care.
He likes to be called ma'am, so I
I
forgot.
do, yeah.
You do you, man. Ma'am.
Man,
It's all good.
gotta
I have
get
no
that.
problem with that.
Well, Tara, thank you so much for being on here. This
Thank
was
you.
the Noir Hour with myself and Tom of October Noir. So there we go. Maybe I'll get Tom on a few more of these, and maybe we'll talk again sometime in the future. Because
Yeah, let me
because
know.
because if history repeats itself, there will be a new album and more recordings and at some point.
Hopefully. I hope she wakes up.
I'm sure
Just
Well,
she
you
go-
will.
almost look like you were calling out to Mike with that. You kind of like cut your eyes over and said
He's
it
not
loud
home
enough.
right now.
Oh,
He's not, no. No, I've learned not to ask him. 'Cause if you ask him, the band would have already been ended 100 times. Like
Yeah.
he does. Everyone he says that's the last one. Every single time, it's the last one. And then another one comes out. So
Yep.
you just never know.
It's a good thing it does.
Yeah, I hope so. You don't want to overstay your welcome either.
No, yeah.
It's a
No,
fine line.
Yeah. No, I was just happy to be
Lycia,
here.
I think Lycia is a legacy band. I mean, I don't think that you could ever outdo your welcome in the.
I don't know. It's hard telling. I don't
I mean,
know.
I don't think.
I don't look any gift horse in the mouth. I'm very grateful that we've got to do what we've gotten to do and had the support that we've had. Because it was not always that way. So
Right.
the fact that people still even care is a blessing, really.
Yeah. Well, just like you said with Typo, that you feel like they're getting bigger and bigger right now. I mean,
Feels like it.
there are always people out there that are coming back to the roots of all the music that they love, and at the root, which I personally myself I have found, Lycia is at the root of a lot of the things that I love. So I have to thank
Aww.
Tom for that.
Well,
Because I really,
He's kissing
Yeah.
your ass right now. He doesn't really mean it.
no, I'm not.
no, that's sincerely, that I mean, really, when I tell you that the fact that anybody even cares means something to us, I genuinely mean that. I'm not just saying that to like look humble or something. Like I really genuinely mean that because not everybody gets that support. So it truly means a lot to us that anybody cares at all, really.
Yeah. Well, you've just talked to two fans for sure.
Well, I appreciate that.
They made it like the elder fan. You know.
Well, yeah, he's the elder
Way
fan.
back.
I'm the
Yeah.
newcomer.
Me too.
Yeah. So
Well, Tara, it's great to talk to you. I hope we get to talk to you again soon.
Absolutely. Just, whenever.
Okay. We'll
Talk to
see
you
you.
guys later.
Thank you,
Bye.
Tara.
Bye.
See ya.
Bye.
All right, Tyler, go fuck yourself.